Hello, and welcome to Save California Salmon and Humboldt State University's Advocacy and Water Protection in Native California Summer Speaker Series and Certification Program. We are committed to providing this series for free, but if you support this work, please consider donating to Save California Salmon or volunteering to help. If you miss any presentations, including the core classes, they are available on YouTube at Humboldt State University's Native American Studies page. Links to the presentations and background materials will be posted on Save California Salmon's website on our education page. Please also know that more detailed classes on many of the subjects we will address are available through Humboldt State University's Native American Studies program. We would like to begin the day acknowledging that we are all here on Native lands, and here I am on Yurok land in Orleans, California. And I thank the Yurok Tribe for helping out with this series and for allowing me to live on Yurok land. We would also like to voice our support for all the people around the world who are fighting to dismantle systematic racism and for police accountability. We're in solidarity with Black lives and the dismantling of systematic racism. Systematic racism and colonialism impacts almost every aspect of people's lives, including the environmental, water, health, and food policies here in California. Here in California, over 1 million people do not have access to clean water, and many Native people do not have access to their traditional foods, are unrecognized, or no longer have a land base. Locally here on the Klamath River, many people, including people that would be great presenters for this series, cannot engage because of the lack of internet or power. And because of that, due to the COVID-19 crisis, many people are unable also to engage in online learning and decision-making during the COVID-19 crisis. That said, I'm excited to introduce today's speakers. Kayla Farrell-Smith is from Signal Fire, and she's also a board member for Rogue Climate and a Klamath tribal member. And she will be talking to us today about both arts and activism and the Pacific Connector pipeline and the threats that it provides to the Klamath Basin. Michael Belchak is a biologist for the Yurok Tribe and will be talking about the state of the salmon on the Klamath River and the threats to the Klamath River and opportunities for restoration through dam removal. And Tom Stokely is an analyst with the Pacific Coast Federation of Fishermen's Association and Save California Salmon, and he'll be presenting on history of the Trinity River and also threats to the Trinity River and why this is such an important tributary to the Klamath River. I am going to give a quick overview of the Klamath Basin, and please give me a minute to make sure that my screen sharing is working. Sorry, we have several presentations up. Sorry about that. Uh-oh. Please bear with us as we deal with the changing technology that we're dealing with. So the Klamath Basin is a complicated watershed and kind of a complicated story. It starts in the Upper Klamath Lake and the wildlife refuges around it, including Lower Klamath Lake and Tule Lake. It has many large tributaries, including the Sprague, Wood, Williamson, Trinity, Scott, and Shasta rivers. The wetlands in the Klamath and the rivers have been dammed, diked, drained, diverted, and that's left many of the species in danger of extinction. These species include coho salmon, lamprey eels, fall run salmon, and also endangered coho salmon, chawam and quado, which is the Lost River and short-nosed suckerfish. The Klamath is also complicated as far as water rights, case law, fishing allocations, and politics. In 2001, the Bush administration decided to use the Klamath in its push to undo the Endangered Species Act after farmers in the Upper Basin hosted a large protest called the Bucket Brigade. The Bush administration overrode a biological opinion meant to protect coho salmon and endangered suckerfish, which limited farmers' water deliveries. The next year, due to the meddling in this biological opinion, up to 64,000 salmon died on the Yurok Reservation, which devastated the local community and the fishing industry. Since then, juvenile fish kills have occurred many years, and adult fish kills have been narrowly avoided due to Trinity River water releases. The Klamath is also complicated as far as their tribes and tribal rights. The Yurok, Hoopa Valley, Karuk, Shasta, Quartz Valley, and Rezagini tribes call the basin their home. Some of these tribes are federally recognized, and some have reservations. Some have been terminated and their reservations have been taken, and some live on rancherias. The Yurok tribe has established fishing rights due to a case that went to the Supreme Court, and the Hoopa tribe also has established fishing rights. The Klamath tribe has an adjudicated water right that was won after about 30 years of lawsuits and struggle, and 2 Ninth Circuit court cases in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. This has helped establish important case law. The Klamath is also undergoing a FERC relicensing. This has led to an agreement to take down 4 dams. The campaign to take down the dams, which was led by the tribes, used science, the law, negotiations, and a direct action to accomplish the goals of dam removal agreements. The fish kill was a catalyst for this movement. And with that, I'd like to again introduce Mike Belchek to present on what is happening now with the state of the salmon in the Klamath River. And Carrie, can you unmute Mike?
I can unmute Mike.
Oh, okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Belchik. I'm a senior water policy analyst, although my training's in biology, and I work for the Yurok Tribe. I've worked for the Yurok Tribe now for about 25 years, and my job is, as a water policy analyst, is to work on the river flows and dam removal on the main stem Klamath. And where does my job come from? You know, what is it? So I work for the Yurok Tribal Government, and everything we do in the Yurok Tribal Fisheries Department stems from the culture and the values of the Yurok people. I'm not a tribal member, but I am an employee and I take it very seriously what we do. So the mission of the Yurok Tribe is to exercise the Aboriginal and sovereign rights of the Yurok Tribe, of people, to continue forever the tribal traditions of self-governance, cultural and spiritual preservation, stewardship of the lands, waters, and other natural endowments. I want to just point out that the stewardship, the value of taking care of things, is a central tenet of Yurok culture. I can't know exactly what it's like to be a Yurok tribal member, but I do take it seriously when I am taught and I learn about the stewardship mission of the Yurok tribe. So simply put, the job is to fix the river and the cultural landscape now and into the future for durable solutions. When we look at the problems on the Klamath, they're big. They're big problems. There's dams, there's a big water project. These are going to require landscape scale solutions, and they're going to require solutions that are integrated and oftentimes don't fit well into, let's say, an Endangered Species Act paradigm or things like that. So we're going to talk about the water and fish today, and I'm going to start with the fish. Next slide, please. One of the differences between tribes and tribal entities and other entities like U.S. Fish and Wildlife or different federal or state agencies is that the tribe sees the whole picture and they're concerned with all the species. You don't have to wait until a species gets almost on the door of extinction for the tribe to be concerned about it. So when we look at like what's important on the river, this slide right here has all the important fish and resources. So there's fall Chinook, spring Chinook, coho salmon, pink salmon, candlefish, chum, salmon, etc. I mean, you get the picture. Mussels, otters, regalia, riparian vegetation, basket materials, all of it's important. It's not just what's on the endangered species list. But when you look at what's happening with the Klamath, next slide, you can see that there's trouble here. We've already lost some, and I know there's a red X through candlefish, but we actually have a very small run that's still there. But this is just sad. I mean, candlefish, you look on, you know, we're a staple. People would make candlefish camps down at the mouth of the river. The Kopto and the Chwam are on extinction's doorstep right now. You know, the youngest ones you can find there are almost 30 years old. They're about to go, and this is not okay. If we keep going, next slide, please. We see, in addition to the ones we've lost, we're about to lose other ones. Spring Chinook are hanging on by a thread in the Salmon River, coho salmon, summer steelhead. All what we're seeing here is that things are in trouble. And if it's like trying to solve a case here, like, all right, we see that a murder has been committed. What happened? Next slide, please. And we can start to see, if we start to see what's happened to the landscape, we start to see what's happened to the river here. And so one of the questions I deal with in my work all the time here is, how much water does a river need to live? And I think, you know, Indian people know, and I know, the answer is pretty simple to that, actually. You don't need a big multi-million-dollar flow study to understand that in order for the river to truly be itself, it needs all the water, all of it. The natural flow paradigm, and even Western science is finally catching up with this idea here. And so when you start looking at like all of these flow studies that are done, whether it's you know, ones that the Yurok Tribe has participated in, what they're trying to answer is how much water can be taken out of the river. And that's a question that even just trying to answer it is dangerous, because you're already acknowledging that some can be taken out. But this dam that we're looking at in this picture here is pretty interesting. This is Link River Dam, and it's at the outflow for Upper Klamath Lake. Now, Upper Klamath Lake used to flow out of that area right there just fine without a dam. There was a big rock reef in there. And of course, you know, white folks had to come along and blast it out of the way and put a dam in. And now that that's there, you got to manage it somehow. And the Kopto and the Chwam need the lake to be at certain levels upriver. And working for the Yurok Tribe, we've always respected that. I actually used to work on Kopto and Chwam, and I lived in Chiloquin for a while. And have worked with the Klamath tribes back in the past. But so now the question is become thrust upon us. How much water does a river need to live? Next slide. Well, it needs more than what was given to it in 2002. This is a picture I took myself. And when I'm right at the mouth of Blue Creek looking upriver. Blue Creek is emptying into the river just upstream from there. And it's hard for me to even look at this picture. So this is what's at stake here. We talk a lot about water and acre feet and the flow that the river needs and everything. And it's good to take a look at this picture every now and then and remind yourself, this is what's at stake. This is what happens when you don't give a river enough water for it to live here. And so when we talk about like, well, what does it take to get water in here? The fact is, even though the Endangered Species Act isn't what really should rule the river, what really should govern river flows is how much water is necessary for the river to be itself and to fulfill the rights of the indigenous tribes on the river. That's what the true question could be, but oftentimes you got to deal with the hand you're dealt. So how does it happen? How does a change happen? Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So, sorry about that. So first of all, can we go back one? I'm sorry, So when we talk about like what must be done, can we go back one slide, Regina, please? We're skipping to how does it happen?
I actually don't. Oh, hold on. Here we go. I think I can. Yep.
That's right. I could talk us through it. So we talk about what must be done. One of the reasons I feel, one of the reasons I've stayed with the Yurok Tribe and I feel like I'm doing good for the river is the Yurok Tribe has never been afraid to think big, to think about what it really takes to solve the problem here. And so with things like dam removal, when the Yurok Tribe, Hoopa, and Yurok Tribe started talking about removing the dams on the Klamath River, nobody else was. We were the first ones to talk about it. We bring the salmon home. I think the other thing about dam removal is that will unite the basin, both with the salmon, but also culturally, both for indigenous people, the Klamath tribes, Yurok tribe, Yurok tribe, but also for other folks too, farmers, fishermen in the ocean, things like that. The salmon are the integrator. They bring the upper and lower basin together. We need the right flows on the Shasta, Scott, Trinity, and Klamath. If you give the right amount of flows, if you give adequate flows to support the fishery, it doesn't automatically fix the fish. They need more than that. But the converse is that if you don't have the right flows, if you don't have enough water in the river, then no matter what projects you build, what fisheries habitat projects, you import some wood in there, you do all the right things, it's not going to work if you don't have the right base flows in the river. The other problems we have are to fix the water quality. We need to, it was going to say restore fisheries habitat. Restore fisheries habitat. The Sprague and the Williamson right now are in dire shape, as are the Shasta and Scott rivers. And we also need to restore the wetlands, large-scale wetland restoration in the Upper Klamath Basin. Next slide. And we talk about how to make that happen. So I'm talking with people who are interested in protecting the river, water protectors, people who want to restore, people who want to integrate tribal values into society here. And so how does it happen to make the change happen? That's what I've been working on my whole career. This starts with culture. It starts with integrating traditional environmental knowledge and science. And I'm telling you, as a non-tribal member working on this, science oftentimes verifies what traditional environmental knowledge knew all along. I see a convergence over and over again. Example, spring Chinook and fall Chinook, and Western science just finding the gene that distinguishes the two, but traditional environmental knowledge knew those were different all along. That's an example there. But to make things happen against the machine that's in place now, and even the Trump administration's bad, but I worked through Democrat administrations that they weren't much better, to be honest. It takes everything. You need litigation. You need direct action. You need to be thinking about media, politics, policy. You need to organize. The message I'm trying to get is that you need every tool in the toolbox in there. One thing or another won't get it done. And that picture right there, that's from when the tribes went to Scotland, and this is in front of the Pacificor, where it was Scottish Power shareholder meeting in downtown Edinburgh, Scotland, when the tribes took the fight across the ocean to Scottish Power because Scottish Power owned the dams on the Klamath. They owned Pacificor at the time. And I just put this up as an example of what it takes sometimes to get people to listen to you. Next slide. So one of the big issues we're doing is dam removal. And so right now we're working through, as our people on the Jordan Cove pipeline, through the FERC issues. So the dam removal deal right now has a nonprofit organization that has been created. Pacificor is providing $200 million through a ratepayer surcharge. State of California is kicking in $250 million through a water bond. And then we're waiting for FERC approval to transfer the dams to this company, to the Klamath River Renewal Corporation. Everything's been done. The Klamath River Renewal Corporation has Kiewit International, one of the largest construction companies in the world, on project. We have engineering drawings done to 90% spec, plans drawn up on exactly how to take the dams down, contractors ready to work, environmental documentation done, clean water quality permits done, applications submitted to FERC, letters of support even from the company saying, please decide. And FERC will not act. And I will say that the studies that have been done for regarding dam removal, as far as the downsides and the upsides, are extensive. There are tens of thousands of pages. And so right now, the company has decided there's an upside to removing the dams. They want out. They've signed the agreement to take them out. We've looked through all the environmental things. Next slide, please. And this is one of the, next slide shows one of the environmental. This is toxic algae right here. There's a whole number of temperature effects, and I'm not going to go into all of that. Next slide. The potential to be gained is over 400 miles of anadromous fish habitat. But that's not enough. We need to do more than that. So one of the other challenges is water quality. Next slide. And what we see as a solution to that is large-scale wetland restoration. And this is a picture of Upper Klamath Lake showing the Wocus marshes and Mount Scott near Crater Lake in the background. But this is the way you can clean water. This is what it takes to get the nutrient-laden water out of Upper Klamath Lake to stop affecting the water quality downriver so much. I want to finish, I'm on my second to last slide. Next slide will be the second to last slide. I want to talk about durable solutions and some of my observations over a couple of decades. When we talk about the mission of the Yurok Tribe, it has a time element to it. It needs to be durable. It needs to preserve the river for the future. And so we need clear thinking required for the long-term solutions. The way forward is not always obvious. Oftentimes, tribes are faced with two choices. You can either fight it, like, why don't we just go to court, for example? You hear that a lot. Or sometimes it's worth talking with people and trying to figure out if there's a solution that could work out for everybody. It's not always obvious, and sometimes you have no choice. Sometimes you're forced into litigation. You have to fight for what your right is. And I'll give as an example. Right now, the water flows depend almost entirely on the Endangered Species Act. Is that the best way to ensure flows when we move forward? Is that durable? What's going to happen in 20 years? What if the ESA is overturned? What if coho are not listed anymore, et cetera? So what's really protecting the water right? To me, it feels like the Endangered Species Act is a thread, and it's bearing the entire weight of the lower river flows, when in fact, there's tribal rights. There's an important fishery. There's economic might to the fishery downriver also. Like, look at all the ports up and down the West Coast. And another thing that I've seen, especially lately, is how can tribal rights become more of a guiding factor in the flow and water management decisions. And I will just observe, and every tribal member knows this, that rights are never granted, they must be asserted. And so when you look at the Klamath tribes, you know, they made a decision in the early 1970s to assert their right, to go for the water right. And right now they're in the final stages, decades later, of winning. And so sometimes you have to do that. And these are the questions right now that the Yurok Tribe are looking at right now. We're looking at the ESA and other options like that, and seeing a future where that doesn't look so secure. So I think right now it's safe to say that the Yurok Tribe is thinking through a lot of its options. I see there was a question about granting the river living rights. The Yurok Tribe has taken steps to do that. It's not clear whether that's going to provide traction with the US courts or law or anything like that. But I think the bigger point, though, is that We go back to how to get it done. When we look at, say, the campaign for dam removal, it took media. I think direct action had a huge impact on how the company was thinking about the dams. We had to win litigation against PacifiCorp. It took everything. We had to develop the right science. We had to get tribal members interested in direct action. It took everything. And I think that's what it's going to take moving forward to get these landscape scale solutions to work in this basin. And I did see some questions as I was talking. That's last slide, please. That I think we will have time for question and answer, and I want to make sure to give the other panelists time. Is that right, Regina?
Yeah, there'll be question and answer at the end. So
okay, so because I saw some really good questions, but I'm at the end of my time. So I'll answer some questions. Hold on to them. We'll talk about them in a little bit, okay? Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Mike, and thank you so much to the Yurok Tribe for all you do for the rivers. With that, now I'd like to introduce Tom Stokely, who's with the Pacific Coast Federation of Fishermen's Associations and Save California Salmon, and he's going to present on the Trinity River, which is the Klamath's largest tributary.
Thank you, Regina. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. I'm with Save California Salmon. I work with PCFFA. I'm also with California Water Impact Network. The Trinity River is the largest tributary of the Klamath River, and the two rivers share the lower 44 miles before entering the Pacific Ocean. The Trinity is in a very unique position of being a natural Klamath River tributary, but it's also a tributary of Clear Creek, the Sacramento River, and according to state law, it's considered a Delta tributary watershed. So it's really right in the middle of things. Oh, I need to give my PowerPoint here. Hang on. No, that's not it. There we go. Okay. So that's Trinity Dam. It's quite large. This is a view of the Trinity River division of the Central Valley Project. You can see Trinity Dam, Lewiston Dam, what's now called the Clear Creek Tunnel, Whiskey Town Reservoir, and the Spring Creek Tunnel that takes it into Keswick Reservoir and the Sacramento River. Despite hydraulic mining, unregulated logging, overfishing, and other impacts, the Trinity River has historically produced large numbers of salmon, steelhead, sturgeon, lamprey, and other species. However, an act of Congress in 1955 authorized the Trinity River Division of the Central Valley Project, otherwise known as the TURD of the CVP. We'll call it the Trinity River Division. It consists again of Trinity, Lewiston, and Whiskey Town dams, associated tunnels, including again the 10-mile Clear Creek Tunnel, which takes essentially Trinity River water from the Klamath Trinity Basin into the Sacramento Basin. The fishery has steadily declined since the dams were completed in 1963, despite a congressional requirement to do no harm, which is up here in the upper left-hand side, or upper right-hand side of that slide there. There are numerous laws, regulations, and legal authorities that require the Trinity River's fisheries to be protected in order to meet tribal trust obligations to the Hoopa Valley and Yurok tribes, as well as the California Public Trust, the Clean Water Act, and other legal obligations. The 2000 Trinity River Record of Decision substantially increased Trinity River in-stream flows, and I don't have time to go into all those laws and requirements now, but suffice to say that the fishery has not been adequately protected and has been in serious decline for decades. The waters of the Trinity River are extremely valuable, perhaps the most valuable water per acre foot or per gallon than any other water source in California. The Trinity River Division produces large amounts of hydropower because of the difference in elevation between Trinity Lake and the Sacramento River and the 4 power plants that are in between. The Trinity River was specifically dammed to provide water to the powerful Westlands Water District of Fresno, whose lobbyist David Bernhardt is now the Interior Secretary, and therefore the waters and fish of the Trinity River are constantly under threat. Bureau of Reclamation has contracted for far more water than exists in reality, so the Trinity River is another victim of what we call paper water, whereby the demands are always greater than the supply, and there's never enough water for all. And here are some of the major threats to the Trinity River. Here's a nice picture of Trinity Dam and Reservoir, perhaps if you're on magic mushrooms. Anyway, the cold water in Trinity Lake, Trinity Dam was built in the early 1960s. At the time, it was the largest earth-filled dam on Earth. That's about 500 vertical feet there. During periods of drought, Trinity Lake water levels will continue to decline year after year, and ultimately Trinity Lake will run out of water sometime in the future because there is no legally binding minimum storage requirement. When the reservoir gets down to about 36% of capacity, which is about 900,000 acre feet out of 2.5 million acre feet, there's not enough water to keep the fish in good condition below the dams, especially if the cold water runs out early in the summer. Here's another picture of Trinity Dam just as it was built. You can see the landslide on the left abutment there that's still active. Obviously, things have grown out a little bit more since then. Here's a picture of Trinity Dam before they filled it in the early 1960s. Trinity Dam's power plant outlet is about 100 feet higher than the auxiliary outlet on the bottom of the dam, which is down in here. If the power plant, actually I've got a pointer here. Oh yeah. So I think the auxiliary outlet is in here. I'm not sure where the power inlet is, but it's a 100-foot difference between the two. If the power plant is not bypassed starting at around 900,000 acre feet of storage, warm water from the upper layers of the reservoir will discharge into the river such that it will harm the downstream fish. To give you an idea of the magnitude of the size of this dam, I want you to look at the glory hole spillway in the upper left-hand corner, that little donut-looking thing there, and now look at the next slide. That's the glory hole there. I think that's about 30 feet in diameter. I'm not completely sure, but it will pass 24,000 cubic feet per second when it's full. The Clear Creek Tunnel, which moves water to the Sacramento River, is 17.5 feet in diameter, and it's big enough to drive a Jeep in. This is a picture maybe taken by Mike Belchick, I'm not sure, but this is a picture of the Klamath River fish kill that he talked about. I use it as an example of what happened to the Trinity River in 1977. The Bureau did not bypass the power plant, and hundreds of thousands of young salmon and steelhead died at the hatchery from warm water diseases such as columnaris. We don't really know what happened in the river that year, but surely it was not good, especially for the spring chinook that we're holding in the river. These were similar conditions to those found in 2002 in the Lower Klamath fish kill, again, which is the photograph above. Power plant bypasses mean lost hydropower production, and therefore less power is produced and less money is made. So it's not popular with the Bureau of Reclamation and its water and power contractors, but it is necessary at times to save the fish from getting cooked. Various current and proposed projects, such as the increased water deliveries to CVP contractors under the Trump Water Plan, the Westlands Permanent Water Contract, Sites Reservoir, Delta Tunnel, they're all projects that will lead to accelerated demands on the Trinity River and increase the frequency of cold water running out in Trinity Lake during extended drought. These projects can also change the timing of water diversions from the Trinity River to the Sacramento River, thereby causing warming of the water in Lewiston Reservoir because there's not enough water moving through it, and that can heat up the Trinity River even if there's enough water in the river. And this is particularly critical during the summer when the spring chinook are holding in the river, and during the fall when the fish are spawning. Uh-oh. Well, there we go. hang on. Okay, the next threat is Sites Reservoir. It's a proposed off-stream reservoir west of Maxwell. You can see Trinity Lake is up here. Here's the diversion. Essentially, the water from the Trinity River and Trinity Lake could be used to fill Sites Reservoir. Save California Salmon had our hydrologist, Greg Kamen, review the 2017 draft environmental impact statement and report, and he found very significant impacts to the Trinity River despite assurances that there would be no harm to the Trinity River. This includes the modeling did not include Humboldt County's 50,000 acre-foot contract or the Lower Klamath record of decision that's there to prevent another fish kill in the Lower Klamath. It changed the timing of diversions from the Sacramento River from fall months to winter and spring, which would increase temperatures during the fall spawning period. There's a decrease in Trinity River flows in the winter, and not related to the Trinity, but still of importance, is that the minimum 5,000 cubic foot per second bypass in the Sacramento River would have very significant negative impacts to the Sacramento River. Okay. Save California Salmon did lead an effort to request a recirculated draft EIS-EIR for the sites project in 2019. And while they're not doing it because of us, they are reissuing a supplemental draft EIS-EIR next year. And we are hopeful that the impacts to the Trinity River will be eliminated, but I'm very skeptical. Humboldt County has submitted specific language to the Sites Project Authority for the project in order to eliminate Trinity River impacts, but so far there has not been a positive response. We will continue to have our experts review and comment on the supplemental document next year. If we don't like what we find, there are several administrative actions that can be taken. The next is the Trump Water Plan, the so-called new biological opinion, otherwise known as reinitiation of consultation for long-term operation of the State Water Project and the Central Valley Project. Historically, Trinity Lake has not been drained to a mud puddle because of limits on the Bureau of Reclamation's pumping from the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta in order to protect endangered species in the Delta, salmon and Delta smelt. The Trump administration has undone that regulatory protection through their new operating plan and biological opinion. We had our hydrologist, again, Greg Kamen, look into the new operations plan, and he found that the Bureau of Reclamation performed inaccurate modeling that actually over-predicted storage in Trinity Lake to the point that during the next multi-year drought, we could see Trinity Lake 350,000 acre-feet lower than the Bureau says it's going to be. And that basically means that the fish will start to die in the Trinity River sooner than they predicted. The Bureau of Reclamation is also in the process of taking 86 interim Central Valley Project water contracts and turning them into permanent water contracts. And the biggest one is, of course, Westlands, but there are others. And I won't go into all the specific impacts of those particular contracts, but suffice to say that it will ultimately increase demands on the Trinity River, decrease the amount of cold water storage in Trinity Lake, especially during extended drought. One of the ways that could happen is if some of this agricultural water is transferred to municipal and industrial uses, and they get different cutbacks during drought. So again, that would increase demands on the Trinity River. The Delta Tunnels project is proposed to allow greater deliveries of both Central Valley Project and State Water Project water from north of the Delta at Clarksburg on the Sacramento River and send it down to the state pumps at the Southern Delta instead of having the water go down the Sacramento River and then go back upstream on the San Joaquin River. Again, this project will likely lead to increased demands on Trinity River and Trinity Lake water, and especially during severe drought. I'm reasonably certain that we will be able to stop the latest version of this project, but there's never an assurance it won't come back to haunt us like a killer zombie, like it has for the last 40 years. I've been working to fight this project for the last 10 years, And I'm proud of the fact that we killed the Twin Tunnels projects, and we will continue to participate in the process. In summary, we have two options. One is the one on the left when we run out of water for fish, and the other is the one on the right when we have healthy species, all the ones that Mike Belchik talked about. The Trinity River is already at risk of running out of cold water. Each successive decision and project and almond tree that's planted increases the ability and demand to deliver more Central Valley Project water south from the Trinity River and change the timing of diversions. This increases the risk to the Trinity River that the salmon and steelhead will essentially be cooked by warm water releases from Trinity and Lewiston dams. While there are multiple rules, regulations, administrative decisions, legal decisions, and the tribal trust that say the Trinity must be protected, there are multiple threats to make it even worse than it is today. We will continue to work on to protect and restore the Trinity River. And I wanted to just thank the water protectors out there. Thank you for your efforts. I very much appreciated and admired your work at the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors on Sites Reservoir and the Delta Tunnel scoping hearings. You are making a difference. You're the future of the Klamath and Trinity Rivers. I've been doing this for 37 years, and I think it's time for some young talent to take over. And let us not forget that the original Trinity River Task Force that was formed in the early 1970s was a result of a Trinity High School class in maybe 73 or 74 that held a salmon funeral on the Trinity River, and it gained national attention, and it started the restoration efforts that continue to this day. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And yeah, thank you for giving a shout out to the Hoopa High School Water Protectors Club, because the work they've been doing is just amazing. And so now we want to go up to the Klamath River in Oregon, and Kayla Farrell-Smith. Did I say your name right? Yes. Well, hopefully I did. But she is, she's with Signal Fire. She's a very talented artist, and she is also on the board of directors of Rogue Climate, and has done a lot of amazing water protection work. And we're really honored to have you here today to talk about the pipeline, the Pacific Connector pipeline that will be possibly crossing the Klamath River if we don't stop it, and all the work that you do to protect the watershed.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Waklisi gausesas kaila no uksik ini nua modakni. Hi, thanks Regina, and thanks for all the presenters and speakers so far. It's been a really wonderful presentation. So I just introduced myself in Klamath. My name is Kayla Farrell-Smith. I am a Klamath tribal member, and I'm presenting today from Chiloquin, Oregon, or as specifically where I'm at is at Modoc Point, Oregon, which is where my father and ancestors, ancestral homelands are, where the Williamson River flows into the Upper Klamath Lakes, which is where my father was raised. So actually, I'm gonna, as I move forward, I wanna actually show images. So I'm gonna share screen here as, give me 1 second. Can you all see that? Let's see. Excellent. So yeah, this is some images. This is the Williamson River from Singing Rock. So this is the ancestral homelands. Thank you for doing a land acknowledgement at the beginning. And I want to acknowledge this incredible place of the headwaters, which is where my ancestral homelands are from. And so as we move forward, talking about water protection and some of the threats that we're facing, I'm gonna move forward here. So yeah, here's Giwas. So Giwas is Crater Lake, and here's the restored wetlands where the Woods River flows into Agency Lake. And this is a really special place. You can see the swifts flying, and this is this sacred place. And so this is our materials. I know a lot of you were talking about or mentioned some of that. So this is the cattail and tule that we harvest for our basket weaving. I want to acknowledge Kintpuash, Captain Jack. This is the ancestral homelands of the Modoc, Klamath, Yahuskin. This is our, our relatives, warriors, water protectors, and we want to recognize and state that these are the ancestors and the fight that we bring today. We want to remember them. This is my grandma, Delia Smith. So this is the woman. We have our male warriors, our masculine warriors. We have our women warriors, and so we come from a long line of Samics, of being an auntie, being a niece, being a daughter, being a grandmother, and being that ancestor today. So just to, as we move forward talking about, I'm going to jump into the pipeline talk, but I just want to say thank you to everybody behind all of these fights. And I want to recognize that I'm speaking as one person in this struggle. And there's so many people and so many leaders that have been Indigenous leaders. This is a Indigenous-led resistance and movement. And we're fighting a lot of zombie projects right now. But we want to recognize everybody who's a part of this and all of your work, all the organizers and backstage warriors, all the cooks, the Indigenous designers, all the water protector artists, the local community solidarity, all the partnerships that have been built. I just want to say that. And to all the local tribes who are publicly opposing the Jordan Cove Pipeline Project up until this point. Okay, I'm passing that one because this is not a workshop. So just to I wanted to acknowledge the headwaters up here, but also to acknowledge the stronghold, the Modoc stronghold in the lava beds. So we are descendants from the Modoc War. And we are living in war times right now, fighting these pipelines. So my presentation and what I want to talk about is the Pacific Connector Pipeline, and we do not want this pipeline through our ancestral homelands. We're always, encouraging and wanting to inspire Indigenous-led dreaming and collective remembrance, because that is how we will win this fight and all these fights. So here's a map. What we're talking about here is the Pacific Connector Pipeline. It would be connecting with the Ruby Pipeline. But really, this is the Indigenous lands that you can see the dotted borders. So right at Klamath Falls there, Klamath Modoc, this is where I am from, where I live and where I'm reporting from today. And so downriver, where you just heard was downriver, the Klamath River through Kuruk, Yurok, and Hoopa. So this pipeline would be going north up to Coos Bay. So this would be crossing to Kelma, Coquille, Umpqua, Chetco, Tolowa, Tutunini, and Panis, Millet. There's so many ancestral homelands that will be threatened by this pipeline. So again, I'm speaking from one place, but I want to recognize all of the Indigenous people that are threatened by this pipeline and all of our culture, our waterways, and our shared forests. Again, this is a zombie pipeline. So I personally joined this fight after the battle at Standing Rock. So I've been a part of this fight for the last, I guess that's 4 years now. Really, and I moved home to my ancestral homelands for many reasons, but this is one of them. So I want to recognize all the people, all the landowners who are being threatened right now by eminent domain. Okay, so I'm going to jump into it. So we are talking about this little teeny link here, this little teeny link, and you can see kind of all the pipelines that are across Canada and the United States. So basically it's the entire Pacific Northwest. And so the fossil fuel industry is wanting to create the Pacific Northwest as an export for fossil fuel, like natural gas and dirty oil and all that kind of stuff. So this specific pipeline, it's a $6 to $10 billion proposal. It would be the first liquefied natural gas export facility on the West Coast. It's a 235-mile long pipeline. The Jordan Cove LNG export terminal in Coos County would be the largest greenhouse gas emitter in the state of Oregon, which for me, this project is insane and invalid, and we can't be building any more new fossil fuel infrastructure, especially in Southern Oregon. And then we're going to talk about the tankers to transport the gas. So yeah, I'm going to keep an eye on time here. The fracked fields to building the huge pipeline to the export terminal. There's a compressor station in this mix too. And then it's going to go to these huge LNG tankers that are like the size of 3 football fields. And that's what they'd have to dredge Coos Bay. So it's really, really devastating on many, many levels. Again, this is a little bit of an older slide presentation, so I will have some updates, but Veresen is no longer a company involved in this, but Pembina is the Canadian corporation who owns Jordan Cove and Pacific Connector pipelines. And so overall, we call this the Jordan Cove Energy Projects. So I don't know how much time I want to go into it, but there's a long history of the communities, activists, landowners, tribal members. We've been working across the board in Southern Oregon for a really long time to stop this originally like as an import project. Then it's an export project. Where we're at right now is we won really the state of Oregon, we won. So we got all of the permits. I'll go a little bit more into detail on that in a little bit, but basically right now FERC has approved this project, and so we're going to be fighting it, and it's going to be moving into the court, into litigation phases. So yes, a lot of impacts. We're dealing with fracking. What is fracking? Natural gas can be found in coal, shale, and sandstone. Large quantities of water, 2.8 million gallons, are mixed with sand and chemical additives and injected underground at high pressure to fracture the rock and release the gas. Impacts include higher cancer rates, poisoned water, earthquakes, water depletion, and more. So what we're dealing with specifically is gas that will be coming from Montney Basin in BC, Alberta. The Blueberry River First Nation is in extreme opposition to this. And also the Pisiance Basin, I don't think I'm pronouncing that right, Pisiance Basin in Colorado, and they have a lot of opposition to the fracking there as well. Excuse me. So this is from the Blueberry River chief, Marvin Yahi, and he says, our very life, our way of existence is being wiped out. The industrial activity has really hammered our traditions, and in its effects are hunting, fishing, camping, and teaching our children our way of life. The wildlife are vanishing. Our berry picking is being destroyed by pathways and pipelines. So this is a big pipeline. So where I'm at here is in the upper Klamath Lake. Here's Chiloquin, Oregon. We're right south of Crater Lake. And so Malin is a small town. I've been to the compressor station there. It would be 10 times the size of the compressor station. It's a Kinder Morgan compressor station that's there now. I was there with other activists and tribal members for about 5 minutes. I ended up getting a really extreme headache. Within 10 minutes, I had a nosebleed. This is the gas that was leaking out and drastically impacted me. So I am personally have been impacted by the compressor station that's there now. So I'm concerned for that community, which is also a majority Latino or Latinx community. So it would go through, this is the proposed natural gas line. It would be going underneath at least 475 waterways. And they would have to dredge this huge dredging. I don't know how to describe it. It's just terrible. We don't want these huge tankers coming into the bay and destroying our fishing and crabbing communities. It was actually, my parents met in Coos Bay. So that's where it's a really special place to me as an Oregonian. So again, this is 36-inch diameter. It would be a 95-foot wide clear cut right of way. Just to be able to build this thing would be like putting in I-5. Yeah, it's 630 impacted landowners, 9 impacted federally recognized tribes. It impacts 400 rivers and streams, that includes the Rogue, the Klamath, Cusco, Keel, and Umpqua. Safety and wildfire risk, lower safety standards in rural areas, and then the threat of eminent domain, which is what we're dealing with, or which private property owners are suing right now currently, and then the increase of domestic gas rates. So they'd have to do this horizontal drilling, which is really scary, and like drilling underneath waterways. They call it horizontal drilling, and then what happened is it can lead to a frack out. And so this is what we're really concerned about as water protectors in this area, and especially I am a water protector from the headwaters up here, and so I don't want this to happen to any of our waterways, and that would drastically impact all the salmon and fish, everything you all were talking about at the beginning of this. So this is what it would look like, and this is when like rivers can get turned on to can be lit on fire. So this is the compressor station. Yeah, 57% Latino, while the rest of the county is only 11% Latino. And the compressor station releases that toxic air pollution I was talking about, including benzene, toluene, sulfuric oxide, and formaldehyde. And so, yeah, so then there's the pipeline. And now there's the terminal. So this is the actual plant out at Coos Bay, the Jordan Cove Export Terminal. It cools the gas to -260 Fahrenheit to transform it into the liquid. And this is proposed on the traditional Coos tribal land, threatening cultural resources. It's built on unstable sand dunes in a tsunami and earthquake zone in an area of high winds. These are those tankers. They're about the size of 3 football fields, 950 feet long. They're like the largest vessels in the oceans. Massive dredging will be required to allow the ships to enter the port, damaging fishing, clamming, and oyster resources. Public safety concerns may require shipping channels to be closed or restricted during the passage of an LNG carrier, disrupting fishing, recreation, and other economic activities. So, you know, we're talking about rich, beautiful forests. We want to keep our forests that way. We've been suffering from wildfires and all the smoke in our the last many summers, and that's been really horrible. So we're really concerned about climate pollution in the state of Oregon. This would be the largest source of climate pollution in the state. It's already impacting the health of our forests and rivers. And yeah, this gas is it's not good. It's not what we need right now. So, for me, I'm talking about indigenous cultural impacts for the Klamath River, food sustenance, our water, our art. We're talking about basket weaving, our language, our storytelling, our origin stories are linked to the Chouam that you were talking about in one of the previous presentations. And this is our community. This is our wokus. This is our ancestral foods. Here it is. This is we harvest from the seeds of the pods of the wokus, of the yellow lily pad. This is our traditional ancestral food. And I'm a part of the generation now that is moving home and wanting to harvest and learn these ways. And there's a lot of us. And that's what's most important, is it's for the future generations. And I represent and talk about that from that place, and wanting that at this time. I left the city to come home to learn this. Basket weaving. It comes from the tule and the cattails. This is me on the with the bandana on my first harvest. So what we are is the thin green line, and we are wanting to stop these fossil fuel exports through the Pacific Northwest to Asian markets. And yet they say they're going to bring a lot of jobs, but it would be like 5 permanent jobs and a bunch of man camps that would threaten we're dealing with a phenomenon of the missing and murdered Indigenous women, directly linked to man camps built with, that are constructed during these fossil fuel infrastructure projects. And so that's my major concern. I'm concerned for my community, and it's not worth these 5 jobs. So we have more opposition now. It's the Klamath tribes, the Yurok Tribe, the Yurok Tribe, the Siletz Tribe, and I'm pretty sure the Coos came out and they're suing Jordan Cove, but I might need to follow up with that, with the specifics on where we're all at with opposition. But environmental, climate, and community groups, impacted landowners concerned with eminent domain, and the Jackson County Commissions are all opposed this project. But who has supported it? The Oregon AFL-CIO, building trades, other labor groups, the fossil fuel industry, Coos, Klamath, and Douglas County public officials. Senator Merkley has come out, supports this project, and we want to thank Senator Merkley. I can't remember exactly where everybody is on this. And Governor Brown said that she will stand up to protect Oregon. So that's where we're at right now. That is out of date, so I'll end it on this slide here. But yeah, we are moving forward. We're suing FERC. There's a lot of organizations and tribes that are, joining in on this. And so I'm a legal intervener in this project. So, and I've, shown up and testified multiple times to DEQ, who denied the permit, testified multiple times to the Department of State Lands, the DSL, which they withdrew right away. And so then FERC went ahead and approved this amidst a global COVID-19 pandemic. So the threat of the COVID being spread during construction of these pipelines is real sheer insanity. And it literally is like passing smallpox blankets into indigenous communities. So I'm an activist, a water protector, but I'm adamantly against this pipeline being built through my ancestral homelands. I yield my time. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I want to thank all of our presenters. We can now go into some questions and answers. Really quick before we do, I just wanted to mention that we, for the last couple of years, have been dealing with some of the worst salmon runs that we've dealt with in the Klamath River. And so food insecurity is a big deal right now in the Klamath. So if anyone wants to help out, please go to our website, californiasalmon.org, or follow us on Facebook or Twitter. We always have action alerts going on. If you want to help with Fight the Pacific Connector Pipeline, you can go to Rogue Climate. Rogue Climate is doing amazing work supporting their communities on these issues. And also, I just wanted to thank everyone for also bringing in the fact of that this impacts the women in the basin. It impacts our artists, basket weavers, and everyone who depends here. And it's not just an environmental issue, but it's environmental justice and environmental racism issue within the basin. So with that, we're going to go to questions and answers. We are going to go a little over, but that's all right. I was hoping that maybe Carrie can help us with the questions and answers. Would you be able to do that, Carrie?
Sure, yeah, I've been taking note of people's great questions that I wanted to, allow the panelists to answer. So I'll start at the top. The first question we have was from David Zielinski, and he said, what is the harm in removing dams?
Well, that's a really good question. So that's, especially early on when we started the efforts to remove the dams, we heard a lot from the Pacific Corps about the cold water that they provided and about all these things. But in reality, if you're really looking at actually doing it, like taking these dams out, then you do have to look at all the sides of it. So the main impacts were going to be sediment. That's what comes to everybody's mind, first of all. So luckily, by the geography of the Klamath River, we've caught a pretty good break on that, because the Klamath River starts as a full-size river below Upper Klamath Lake, and so it does not have a coarse sediment load. Like, say, the Trinity would, for example. Trinity Dam would have much more sediment trapped behind it. Although that hasn't stopped the Yurok Tribe from advocating taking out Trinity Dam too. But so when we looked at the sediment, one of the major worries was contamination of the sediment. This has been the case in some of the dams, like in Montana, that they wanted to take out. There's been mining waste and mercury and dioxin and those kind of things. But luckily, we did about 275 different cores. We had USGS do them. We had an independent contractor, and they came up clean. So there's sediment, but it's not that much for a river that size. The estimates that we have are somewhere between 5 and 15 million cubic yards. So, okay, what does that even mean? How to visualize that? Well, like, for example, about 15 years ago near T-Bar on the Klamath, there was a natural landslide that was about 1 million cubic yards. So what we see is that, yes, this will be a sediment event for the river, but not out of character with what's happened in the past. Other issues that have been brought up are, well, won't the river dry up in the summer? And the answer is no. These dams store nowhere near the water that Trinity Dam does, for example. About 50,000 acre foot in active storage between all of them, whereas Trinity Dam's 2.4 million acre feet. Other issues have been brought up are, what about flood control? And I would say, much like Trinity Dam, these things are much more of a flood risk than they are at controlling any floods. So the reservoirs for the power production in the Klamath, the 4 dams that are being taken out, not only don't have much storage to capture flood, but they're normally operated at full pool anyway. So these dams don't do anything to ameliorate floods. As a matter of fact, they Iron Gate Dam almost failed in the 1964 flood, and the spillway had to be extensively rebuilt. that risk continues today. As we saw in Oroville, spillways fail sometimes, and this dam has no backup plan. If the spillway fails, it's done. I think I covered about some of the major issues that came up with maybe the downside to removing dams. By the time you get to the lower river, the sediment released will be slightly above background, but in a couple of years, the river will be back to normal downriver. And we know that because we've seen other rivers like the Elwha, the White Salmon, Marmot Dam on the Big Sandy River. These rivers are recovering much faster than experts thought they would. And we believe that'll be the case on the Klamath.
Cool, thanks, Mike. The next question is from Allison O'Dowd. She asks, what do you mean when you say FERC will not act on dam removal? Is there any idea of when FERC will make a decision or if they'll approve?
Right, well, it's this great contrast between Jordan Cove and the Klamath project here. So, we have there's no statutory requirement or deadline for FERC to act. There's no way to make them act. So we being tribal leadership and myself, went to Washington, D.C. and actually met with FERC staff in a government-to-government consultation. We stressed the urgency of the situation, that they needed to act quickly, that they have the environmental information that they need to make the decision, and that there was a lot at stake. We're losing our fish runs. The window's closing here. And they said, thank you very much. The company then sent a letter saying, please hurry, we don't want to delay this another year. FERC has not responded to that. We asked for another government-to-government consultation a month ago, and they said no. They said, no, we heard you guys the first time. We're not going to meet with you. So it's a really interesting contrast, is that when FERC wants to get something done, they're quite capable of moving fast, even in this COVID epidemic. If they don't want something to get done, even if the company's in favor of it, there's nothing we can do to make them act. We can't sue them for inaction, as far as I can tell. It's very frustrating. And that the original KHSA called for an act of Congress to be passed to just end run right around FERC, to cut them out of the loop. The original KHSA failed, it was modified, and we're going through FERC, and this is exactly what we thought might happen, is that FERC is going to screw up this process that, I would just keep reiterating, the company's in favor of it. They want out. Because if the court wants to walk away from the Klamath Basin, take these and have the dams taken out, then FERC will not act.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So the next question we have is from Caitlin Birnbaum, and she asks, what can we do to prevent the pipeline?
Thanks, great question. I was about to type in, I'm reading some of the comments there. I would go to, it's nolngexports.org, I believe, not .com. If somebody could fact check me on that and maybe put a link in the comments. That's a great place to get updates, and as well as rogueclimate.org, which is also in the notes. So I'm a board member for the nonprofit Rogue Climate, and they do wonderful work in community building and partnership building. The organization I work for, Signal Fire, we are an artist residency program, but we are an artist and activist organization. So a lot of our work has been working with the art team and building art for events, and for, we're doing really large scale in-person events. That was what we've been doing in the past, but now since the COVID-19 pandemic has hit, we've taken the quarantine and shelter in place very, very seriously in Southern Oregon to protect our communities. So, there's been virtual, meetings like this, presentations. I facilitated a webinar, which I really encourage you to check out. It's on the Power Past Frat Gas website. So Power Past Frat Gas is another resource where you can learn more about this project and how to get involved. And on that website also is a webinar that I facilitated a week or 2 weeks ago, which was connecting the pipeline fights across the Pacific Northwest from Jordan Cove to Tacoma LNG to the Tiny House Warriors up in Sepwemic, and then to the Wet'suwet'en Strong at Get 'em Dem Checkpoint. And we interviewed Slato, who's the spokesperson from Get 'em Dem Checkpoint. So we are linking all of these stories and narratives together as one. So if you can check out all of those, we have Facebook pages, Instagrams, and yeah, a lot of this is I will update my website too, so KaylaFarrell-Smith.com. So there's a lot of ways that you can get involved, but mainly letting your elected officials know, and especially if you are in Oregon, putting a lot of pressure on Governor Kate Brown right now to make sure that she stands up and protects the indigenous communities and everybody in the state of Oregon who's being threatened by this pipeline project. Thanks.
Awesome, thanks, Kayla. And then a kind of follow-up question, something that you were talking about in your presentation, but a more specific question is there fracking happening in the US as part of this project? And this is by Amy J. White.
Yes, I believe the fracking is from Colorado. They're fracking in Colorado. And so there's been that Western States Initiative. There's just been a big push, I think, from Colorado. There's they want to get their frack gas shipped out. And so it's been a while since I followed all the details of that part of it. So I would recommend, again, following up with Rogue Climate, and Southern Oregon Rising Tide is another group of volunteers who've been doing really great work on working to stop the pipeline. And Southern Oregon Rising Tide was creating coalitions and building that. We were building friendships and just getting to know people from Colorado who are being fracked, and with the communities in Southern Oregon who were being threatened by the pipeline and the export terminals. And because the global, or not global, but, or maybe it is a global, but the narrative that the company was putting out was that everybody's for this pipeline, and really it's the exact opposite. So it's really been fighting a big propaganda machine there, and that's, you know, taking control of the narrative and getting the story out, and has been really the struggle. So that's part of like why I have been writing a lot of letters to the editor and getting letters published to get my part of the story included in this.
Great. So a question from Jillian Wright, this is kind of switching gears, asks, would boycotting almond products help with water preservation? Are there other high water demand products that we could avoid consuming, or other actions that could help save water?
I'll take that one. There has been a dramatic increase in the planting of permanent crops in California, such as almonds, pistachios, grapes, pomegranates. And what this does is creates a permanent demand for water rather than the annual crops. The reason is, of course, they make more money. But the thing about the almonds is that most of them are grown for export. So I don't really think that boycotting almonds is going to make much of a difference. I mean, if you want to, it'll make you feel better, but I don't think it's going to make the difference. What we really need is a prohibition in California on planting permanent crops that don't have an assured supply of water. Places like Westlands, they can get their water allocation cut to zero in any year. And so if they've planted permanent crops, they're going to use groundwater, which is getting cracked down on overuse of groundwater. And basically, these farmers are willing to do just about anything to get more water. But I don't think boycotting almonds is the answer. Others may have other ideas, but that's my perspective.
Great, thank you so much, Tom. And we're just going to do one last question because we kind of have to wrap things up, but you're welcome to send questions to me, and I can get panelists to answer, as well as you know, the moderators as well. My email address is ct243@humboldt.edu. I'll type it in here. And so we're going to do, the last question is, oh, where did it go? What are the best ways that rural communities in Jackson, Klamath, Siskiyou, or Trinity counties can support tribal efforts to bring the salmon home and prevent the additional zombie projects like Sites Reservoir and the LNG pipeline?
Well, I can start on that one. We have Save California Salmon has social media pages on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and we also have a website, and we have a petition site at change.org. So there are always action alerts on all of those sites. When there is a comment period, that's a public comment period, we always post them. But there are other things we specifically need, and I'm sure everyone knows that the people like Pamia and Westlands Water and other people like that, they have a lot of people working on the media, and they really control the way we talk about issues such as climate change and water in California. And we really need a lot of people writing letters to the editors, calling their congressmen, writing opinions, talking to their friends, and letting people know that this is not fish versus farmers, and it's not jobs versus tribes. We need to act on climate change. We need to protect our water, and we need to make sure that there is clean water available to all people. And so we need to change the narrative. And so that's why we're always doing action alerts, but also where you live in your community, you can write letters to the editor. You can get involved in your local groups, whether it be Rogue Climate, Save California Salmon, Signal Fire, whichever that they are, and volunteer, and definitely do everything you can to make sure that the correct information is getting out there. I'm sure other people have something to say about that too, but I just wanted to let people know that changing the conversation, I think, is where we need to go, because most of these crops and most of this fracked gas is being exported, like everyone on this panel has said.
I second that. I think that's great. Yeah, get involved, talk to your friends and families about this. Just do your research and get educated, and then put your voice in and join. We just need as many people together as possible, and just to continue to grow. What I've seen through the partnerships and the camaraderie that's been built through this, the many years that I've been a part of it, it's really awesome. And we just want to, just keep. And I'm from the art team, so like I'm always like, if we can make it look really beautiful, that's that helps too. So get creative.
I just like to add, can I add one thing really quick? First of all, I want to echo the thank you to all the people that we work with. And this is a multi-level type of effort. The part that I'm generally involved in is what you might call the boring work, working with federal agencies, Endangered Species Act consultations, FERC, court cases, preparing litigation, things like that. But we can't be successful without artists and without the people themselves being involved. I'm a support person. I work behind the scenes. I rarely come out and talk to people. And so when I hear like, what can ordinary people do? There's almost always some sort of process going on, some sort of environmental impact statement that needs comments or anything. These things really matter, actually. You would think like writing a little postcard or something like that doesn't, but it really does. And letters to your politicians, they really matter. Getting involved in electing the right people. I know this is kind of, it's like fighting a big machine, but, and it is. There's lots of different ways to fight it. And I just want to say we all work together and we're all part of the same fight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And that's something we've been really trying to hit home, is everyone has a place here, whether or not you are an artist, a writer, a lawyer, a scientist, a cultural leader, or just a supporter. There's always something that you can do to help out. And so on that, I just wanted to announce that this series will continue next week. We will be presenting on the Bay Delta and the Sacramento River watershed. We're really honored that the Winnemem-Wintu tribe, Colleen Sisk, will be here with us. Morningstar Gali, our tribal water organizer, will also be here. And Barbara Berrigan-Perilla from Restore the Delta will be here. So we hope you all can join us next week and find out more about the Trump water plan and how all these new reservoir projects and diversions will affect our neighboring watersheds in the Sacramento and Bay Delta. We also want to thank all of our supporters and funders. We want to thank Humboldt State University's Native American Studies program, the Yurok Tribe, the Hoopa Valley Tribe, the Karuk Tribe, and the Klamath Tribe, Rural Climate, and all of the other people who have put so much into this effort. And we wanted to let you know that all the background information and videos will be posted on the Save California Salmon website. We also wanted to thank Trees Foundation for being our fiscal sponsor, and the Pacific Coast Federation of Fishermen's Association for doing so much work to help also. So we'll see you all next week. Thanks so much, and please continue on with the series, and don't forget to register, and don't forget to fill out your surveys. Have a great day.